Well, hold it. Hold it. It's not Christmas anymore. That's so last week. My goodness. Now it's all about Happy New Year, everybody. And we're going to go into another year, and hopefully this one's a whole lot better than the last year. Welcome to the THC Show. I'm your host, Neil Magnuson. This is a show where we talk about those three letters, T, H, and C, for truth, hope, and change. And we're still finding the truth, so we're still finding some hope for the future, and we're going to change some things as we move forward. Let's hope that in this year to come, we manage to change that one big glaring error on the part of Canada, which is the unethical, immoral, and unjustified attempt to prohibit the use of free people in Canada from using what is the most miraculous and benign plant on the planet. Hopefully we can make that happen. What a year we had, eh? I mean, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to have 8 out of 10 Glenn as usual for the 420 session. We were going to have a guest today, but he's not able to make it. We may talk about that in next week's show when we find out a little more about what happened. So there's a little bit of a cliffhanger for you to start the new year. Tune in next Tuesday, and I'm sure we'll have some information on what happened to my guest. For the CSP, I mean, holy smokes, it's been quite the year again. We went into the year awaiting our licenses. It had been well over a year, almost a year and a half last January that we had applied to Health Canada to get licenses to be able to continue our life-saving work here on the downtown east side that we've actually been doing for just about 6 years now. In February, the first week of February, we'll mark the end of our 6th year of running the CSP. In this year, I mean, we were raided by the VPD. We had our RV taken away, seized, searched, a whole bunch of stuff taken from us. They did end up giving it back to us, and we never missed a beat. The CSP has been operating without missing ever any event since it started. I'm very, very proud to be able to say that. We did 300 events at Vandu. The first year we were there for every Saturday, and for the next 2.5 years we were there every Thursday and Sunday, and we never missed. We were deemed to be an essential service during the pandemic, as well we should have been. But other than that, we seem to get no respect whatsoever. The VPD raided us because, you know, they suspected that we were selling cannabis here, and even though we made it very clear that we were offering low-cost and no-cost cannabis to people to help them get off the opioids and give this neighborhood a safe option from all the other things that are so readily available here. We were raided by the CSU. They came and threatened us and told us that they were going to come back and seize all of our stuff and charge us money and stuff. We haven't seen them since, but touch wood on that. Those immoral pricks could be back at any time. They should just go away, shouldn't they? I mean, holy smokes, shutting down access to medical cannabis for people in light of the different court rulings that we've had over this past year as well. The Howell case was an incredible decision. If you read the judge's comments all through that decision, talking about the need for low barrier access, proper, reasonable, low barrier access. We had the Warnicky, Siemens, and Martin case wrap up this year, where again it was reaffirmed that Canadians have a right, a charter right. Our charter rights have been violated by these federal governments over almost 100 years now. In not allowing for storefront access for medical people and putting ridiculous caps on the edibles that are available through the legal stores, because that's right, we're into our 3rd year of legalization now, and legalization is a phony farce. Don't believe that Canada legalized weed. They did not. They legalized the Trudeau cartel to take control of the cannabis industry, to use taxpayer dollars to try to put out the competition. And that immoral war is continuing on to this moment with no real end in sight. Although I must say that we at the CSP are some glimmer of hope on that, because the raid by the VPD is going to result in us launching a charter challenge. We'll be setting a date for that coming up next Tuesday in the morning. So by next THC show, we should be able to tell you what the date is going to be for our charter challenge against the federal government, who are going to use your tax dollars and my tax dollars to fight us in court, to try to prevent the poor people, the sick people, the people that are addicted and need easy access from getting that easy access. It is such a horrible, abominable tragedy that's going on with what our governments have done for coming up right away to 100 years now in Canada. It is disgusting. It was in 1923 that the Right Honourable Belland, a backbencher, a Liberal backbencher, stood up in the Canadian Parliament to announce that there was a new drug in the schedule, and that was going to be cannabis. And there was no debate about it, they just did it. They already thought they knew everything they needed to know because of all the fear-mongering that had been going on in the States with reefer madness, and our own suffragette judge, Emily Murphy, writing a book where she said that marijuana was the new menace coming up from Mexico and driving people completely insane, and oh my God, what about the children? So they decided to use the biggest tool in the toolbox, being the criminal law, and harsh penalties and all kinds of money wasted on enforcement over the last 100 years of chasing Canadians down, breaking into their homes, stealing their properties, stealing the plants that they were going to use to help themselves and others feel better and maybe make some money on, which is certainly not a crime, nor should it be. It's not the role of government to stifle business. It's the role of government to facilitate business, to make commerce work, and to help that happen. And if there's problems that arrive, then reasonable regulations that address those things is what the government's role is supposed to be. But they have been abusing their power and criminally misusing our public funds for almost 100 years now. This really needs to stop. The other thing that the federal crown, on behalf of King Charles, it's always on behalf of the royal family in Britain that all these things happen here in Canada, because we're not free people at all. We're just a colony of the Brits, and they've been exploiting us for a very long time. In fact, that's what they do, isn't it? The British royal family, going back hundreds of years, have been people that were exploiters of what there was out there. They are greedy, they are opportunists, and they have been preying on the people of this world for far too long, gathering all these riches, more than they could ever count, more than they could ever use, priceless artifacts, many things that don't belong to them. And yet here we are, kowtowing to a bunch of criminals in Britain and allowing them to dictate laws to us, including whether or not we can access a natural herbal medicine that's been part of the pharmacopoeia of the globe for thousands of years, that has one of the most amazing LD50 ratings, where it can't kill anybody, unlike just about every other medicine, every other flower, every other herb. Anything that you can ingest, you can reasonably overdose on to death if you keep consuming it beyond the limits that you should. And that can't be said for cannabis. So what the hell was the reason for ever prohibiting it? Making people violent and insane? Well, violence and insanity are things that we need to address in our society, but they're not caused by cannabis. In fact, they told such a huge lie about that. Turns out it's like completely the opposite. Cannabis can restore your mental health. Cannabis can give you a sense of calm in a chaotic world. It can sort things out for you. It can give you time for introspection and contemplation. Cannabis is a fabulous spiritual medium to get us into better states of mind. It doesn't ever really harm anybody, but the laws sure do. You look at the damage caused by the laws trying to prohibit cannabis, incalculable. So many ruined lives, so much wasted dollars, so much disrespect for police and for government and for parents and for children. All of this is all just a result of greed and corruption, and it continues on to this day. And we have been exposing that here at the CSP for the last 6 years. It was over 6 years ago now that the idea presented itself, where we had a public health emergency of overdose deaths from a poison drug supply going on, and I had past experience leading me to understand that high-dose edibles was a way out for people. So easy access to high-dose edibles seemed like the logical thing to do, So I went and talked to VANDU, you know, the Vancouver Area Network of Drug Users, that large organization of peers and people from the neighborhood, people that this is all about. Those very oppressed people are the ones that run VANDU. And they've been running harm reduction strategies here for the last 25 years, including Insight, which was finally embraced eventually by the federal government after kicking and screaming and using tax dollars to fight that in court as well. But all of these measures that VANDU has come up with are reasonable. They make sense because they're designed by the people whose lives are affected, who really understand the dynamics of all of these things because they are on the front lines. And that's where I went first with the CSP proposal. I went to the VANDU board, I explained it to them. They already knew that cannabis was the best harm reduction tool in the toolbox before I got there. I'd had quite a relationship with VANDU for many years before that, and the board was very familiar with the power of cannabis to help people that were afflicted by drug addiction. So I got unanimous approval by VANDU to start this project in their premises with all of their full supports. This is a VANDU project right from the beginning. It's not just me. Not just the CSP team of volunteers, it's not just the Serious Hope Society. Ultimately, bottom line, we are VANDU, this is a VANDU initiative, and we need to get some respect for that as we move forward into the courts. With VANDU's unanimous approval to go to City Council and seek their approval, that's exactly what was done. Not only City Council was presented with the entire idea of how we were going to hand out high-dose cannabis edibles to people, but the VPD board was also fully informed at a board meeting where myself and Rob Laurie attended with me on that one, and we explained it all to them as well. So we moved forward only after having the full support of VANDU, having fully informed City Council and the Vancouver Police Department. We were seeking support from the Vancouver City Council. That was the only place to seek support at the time. There was no legalization of cannabis in Canada. There was no Health Canada licenses to apply for or anything like that. We just needed the City of Vancouver to embrace what we were doing, as it was going to solve and put a big dent in the overdose deaths that were happening all around us. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen for 2.5 years of doing the program. I firmly believe that if you do the right thing and you do it over and over and over again, eventually good things will happen. And eventually, the City of Vancouver did unanimously pass a motion to support what we were doing with the CSP and handing out high-dose edibles to people and providing it at low cost and no cost. We met with the city, had a wonderful meeting, got their support during that meeting verbally. We were to go out and find a storefront, get our people off the sidewalks, hundreds of them lining up for hours at a time through all types of weather over those years at VANDU. We got the storefront that we're actually broadcasting from today, and we opened up a beautiful little safe space for people where they could easily access cannabis. But City Council wouldn't support us once we did that. City licensing informed City Council that, oh no, you just can't go ahead and do that. They're going to need support from the federal government. Well, first they said the province, and that was where we tried for an afternoon, until we realized that there's no way we would comply, or them with us, at a provincial level with their non-medical cannabis stores and licenses. It was going to be a special license from the Special Licensing and Exemptions Division of Health Canada, and Mr. Benoit Seguin in charge of that. So John Conroy's put hours and hours of his time for free because he believes in the CSP and he believes in what we're doing here. And we put together a bulletproof application that Health Canada couldn't say no to, and they haven't been able to during all of this time. It's been well over 2.5 years, and they still, well, pardon me, I'm sorry. It was September 16th. We're moving close to 2.5 years since we put that application. That is a phenomenally long period of time. That's a length of time that's comparable to what poor cannabis patients have to wait for Health Canada to approve their licenses and things like that. This is a public health emergency. Their job is to license that which would help with that healthcare emergency. We proved it. We demonstrated it. We got science on our side. It's 4:19. I got so much more to say, but you got 1 minute to roll it, and then we'll get into our 4:20 session. So applying to Health Canada 2.5 years ago, and now in conversation with them over the past 2.5 years, it's become very clear that they're not about to say yes, and they can't say no. And what are they concerned about? They had never once mentioned whether or not we're actually helping save people's lives here and rescue them from addiction. Their only concern is that we're going to harm the bottom line profits of their immoral government licensed stores. That's their big concern. Can you imagine? Health Canada, only concern being the health of the financial bottom line of a bunch of greedy parasites who have seized on cannabis legalization and taken it for themselves at the expense of the poor people, the sick people, and those people wanting to get out of addiction. And continuing to oppress and ruin the lives of all of us good people who are just trying to help people get proper, reasonable access. That brings us to 420. That means Glenn Wells is here for the last time this year.
Buddy, man.
Glenn has been... He didn't know it. Glenn's been so kind and generous with his time to drive in here every week and sit with me and help me out, because God knows I can't do this by myself. 20 minutes later, everybody's bored and they're about to shut me off, and along comes Glenn, and everybody's like, oh, good, now we can have some fun. So I really appreciate it.
Sparkling gum. Happy 420,
yeah, let's
everybody.
light these things up.
Happy
and see
New
if we
Year,
can feel
happy holidays. I hope you all had a great Christmas. I hope you all got to spend some time with your families now that we had no restrictions. This is the year we had no restrictions, so...
Yeah, unless you're trying to go to China.
Yeah.
Places like that. It's,
Oh,
man. You don't cough, you work it off. Good to have a little cough once in a while.
It's good. Smoking some
Thank
showers.
God for cannabis, because what cannabis delivers for me is a state of calmness and ability to control my fast racing brain, to get a handle on the rights and wrongs about different things, and to just relax in the face of stress. And I gotta tell you, I'm not immune to stress. I have very good strategies on how to deal with it, but this has been an extremely stressful 6 years.
Yeah.
To watch these poor people come to us dope sick and suffering and get relief through cannabis and become members of what we're doing here, and to thank us constantly, and yet to have a federal government oppose what we're doing without ever meeting these people, without ever coming down here and seeing what we're doing here. It just is extremely stressful for me.
And then the government helping them stay dope sick by offering a clean supply.
For sure.
Right? Sure, let's keep you dope sick.
Yeah,
right?
we'll give you a clean supply of the opioids.
Yeah. Just go see a nurse. She can write up a prescription for you nowadays. You don't need to see a doctor. Or
It
you
was
go to
over-
that machine. There's a machine in some hotel down by Vancouver there that does that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. The vending machine.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It really breaks my heart, and that's stressful to have your heart broken. And my heart's broken here every day, for a long time. It got ridiculously long, where I kept posting every day. Maybe today's the day. Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, I must have put hundreds of those up because it went on for a very long time. And I just stopped at one point. I was like, this is crazy, We've been saying maybe today's the day that the federal government will do the right thing for all this time, and there's no indication that they will.
No.
We're going to have to force them.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
We should start with David Evie.
It's going to cost. I wrote to David already, and we'll see if there's anything that comes out of any of this. Speaking of the NDP and David Evie, they've been running the province here for quite a while.
Yeah.
They appointed a Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, Sheila Malcolmson. And Sheila Malcolmson, I reached out to her a dozen times at least, that we should meet.
Yeah.
We should talk. I've got information she needs to support. She needs to understand, and she would help us if she got it. But she doesn't want to get it. She doesn't want to meet. She doesn't want to hear about it. She's going to focus on the pharmaceutical companies supplying a clean supply of opioids, and they don't want to talk about cannabis being a solution, even though we have proven beyond any reasonable doubt that this is one hell of a great solution. We are by far the best harm reduction option going on. See, I'm still ranting. I'm not talking to you yet. I'm just still ranting here.
In 4 days, we will be the first province in Canada to allow 2 grams possession
of the hard drugs.
Of the hard drugs, right? Without being charged.
2.5.
Is it 2.5?
2.5.
That's as of January 1st, so 4 days from now.
But don't give them high dose edibles.
No, can't do that. You have to have a doctor's letter to get high dose edibles.
Yeah, 2.5 grams.
Anything over 10 milligrams, you got to have a doctor's letter.
Yeah. Because I guess it's not safe, and you people are too stupid.
People are doing heroin and
crack,
fentanyl,
crystal meth,
and meth, but they've got to have.
You can have that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's
go ahead.
It's stupid.
And there's people.
I guess you have to have a note from a doctor to get that stuff too. In all fairness.
Maybe.
Right, yeah, right.
Are they?
Special RN
I mean,
nurse,
is a cop gonna bust some poor down and out drug addict and find a couple grams of some powder on him and arrest him for that? I don't think so.
They were before.
Not here in Vancouver, they haven't.
Even for rocks.
Not in Vancouver, they haven't.
Oh, really?
Vancouver Police had a policy for a long time, for years, thanks to Van of not continuing to harm and oppress these poor people that are struggling to feel okay and stuck on a drug they can't get off of. So, they've had sane drug policy to some degree here in Vancouver for quite a while. But, the rest of the province too. I mean, if this is a province-wide initiative, I really don't think the police are going to have much of an attitude unless there's extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
Then they always have an attitude.
Yeah.
They don't like you. You did something else they think you did. They're going to give you a hard time. They're going to take you with whatever they can. But other than that, it's really going to be a policy of these drugs are being used by people. People probably have a right to use them.
Remember when all the Colombians came here and they were selling crack rocks and they were busting those people?
When was that?
Oh, that would be 90s maybe.
Yeah, well, I'm not talking about the
90s. Yeah. Well, that's when I was doing coke then.
Back in the 90s, the Vancouver Police didn't have progressive policy.
Okay, yeah. So,
Van Du's been around for about 25 years, and that means it would have started in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And it wasn't for the first couple of years that it really managed to have, those types of impacts on things. It took them a while. The mayor was still opposed to them and other things as well in their initiatives. But
because I don't know anything about the scene after that, right?
Yeah,
but
it seems like I don't know anything about anything anymore. I thought I had a handle on what justice was. I just dropped my joke.
So do we all.
Growing up, my dad wanted to be a cop, and I wanted to respect the laws, and brought up in a Christian home where you render under Caesar that which is Caesar's, and that's his ability and right to choose what laws to make as well. And I mean, that's kind of who I started out wanting to be.
Yeah.
But by the time I was a teenager and growing up in Vancouver here, I was in all kinds of different trouble and not following any of that. But I still thought that I had a good handle on what the justice system was supposed to be all about. Innocent until proven guilty. You have to be found guilty beyond any shadow of a doubt. You get to face your accuser. There has to be a level of damage done that will weigh down that set of scales, and then a penalty to match, and all of those things. I'd given it a lot of thought, and I really thought I had a handle on that. But none of that is true. None of that is true, and it's all easily proven by just having a look at the laws against having cannabis. You didn't do any damage. You didn't have any intent. There's no victim for you to face, and yet here we are. That's probably the number one thing that we have police, bothering people about, and 50,000 or more arrests every year for years and years in a row. It's just been a travesty, and now here I am, going before the courts, and I have. Trust me, I've been saying it over and over again, and if you don't know and you haven't seen the show, this Cannabis Substitution Program of providing low-cost and no-cost high-dose edibles especially, but cannabis for people, I tried to do the right way right from the start. I never tried to hide anything. I went before we ever started. I went to all those levels of government and all the rest of it. Every step of the way, I've done whatever I've been told is the right thing to do, other than to turn my back, by the way, on about 95% of the people that we're helping here, because Health Canada will provide me with a license if I make everybody that we help have a doctor supporting their decision. That is just completely ludicrous.
It is.
But and I won't comply to that. I can't. And so, this here we are now. I'm charged with selling without a license, even though we tried to get a license every step of the way. In fact, we believed we had licenses pending. Before we moved into the storefront and offered the low-cost cannabis the way that we did, we had a meeting with the city of Vancouver. Rebecca Bly, a councillor there who put forward the motion that was passed, assured us that we would get a license, they would support us, and that's what the motion was. It was to support low barrier access. I mean, so we believed we were operating with a license coming right around the corner. And by the way, in a program that had been operating for 3.5 years with hundreds of members relying on us for the supply that they were getting, and without it, doctors and lawyers wrote us letters, and I presented those letters as part of our application. I presented them to the Crown Council, stating very clearly that we cannot stop doing what we're doing without putting a whole bunch of people, hundreds of people, at risk of death. You think, is that something I should be doing as a good human being? Is that what the government expects me to do? Is to just, once we put in our application, to just stop and wait for 2 years and 3.5 months now? Well, how many of those people would be dead or miserable and living in squalor and addiction again? Holy smokes, I can't stop doing what I'm doing. But here we are, going to court against the king, that bloody bastard. I'm just choked.
Yeah.
And they get to find me guilty before proven so. They get to lie to an actual judge about me with no supporting evidence whatsoever. And it just is what it is in Canada, apparently. So here I am, this idea that I had about how the courts worked and justice and stuff was so far wrong. So far. I was shocked.
Oh, yeah.
I was shocked that this immoral piece of shit prosecutor on behalf of the king could get up there before a judge and say, well, Mr. Magnuson is a greedy opportunist. And by the way, Your Honor, we can prove that he knew he should have had a license because he applied for one. So the fact that he applied for one tells you right there he knew he needed one, and yet there he was still doing what he was doing without one. How immoral and ridiculous. What a crime that is against me.
Also, you were doing that because Benoit was telling you that they were working on it hard and they were going to get it to you as soon as possible. I heard that conversation.
Thank you, Glenn, because that is something that for those who haven't seen the show before, for anybody who's seen it before, you know all this stuff.
Yeah.
But for those who haven't seen the show before, yes, we had a meeting about 3.5 months after we put in our application to Mr. Benoit Seguin, a pandemic meeting, through telephones and what have you, with my lawyer and some Health Canada representatives, including Benoit, where they apologized right off the bat. That's the first things out of their mouth. We're very sorry that it's taken so long.
Yeah.
Because they know that their job is to license things that are going to help with the overdose crisis in our society. They know that they're supposed to do it right away. 3 months is unreasonably long time to wait on something that could be saving people's lives. So they apologized right off the bat.
3 years on my renewal now.
And then he goes on to say that they would have licenses, in his opinion, for us in early January.
Yeah.
He mentioned it was complicated. He said that we're concerned because if we give that license to you, then other people across Canada are going to want to apply for that. I explained that there was good political currency in that. That was a good thing.
And there was no letter from them saying that they were intending to refuse, like they gave me and some other people.
Well, we got that this year.
We got that this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I'm told is actually just a formality, which isn't an intent to refuse.
Yes.
It's just the way they go about giving out licenses. But that was months and months ago. That was back in April.
Wow.
And we still haven't heard a thing from them since. We put in quite the response to their intent
Jack
to
put in, he
refuse.
said they have 6 months to respond, so.
April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December.
Yep.
We're already past 6 months, so what does that mean? And now we just automatically get a license? I don't think so.
Well, that's where the constitutional tort comes in.
This is where part of our charter challenge is going to be.
Yeah.
But I'm just appalled and really disgusted. I'm outraged that my federal government, with my money and our money, on behalf of the king, is able to get up and just lie. And what my lawyer, what Jack said about that is that, well, that's just the way it goes. They say bad things about you, and then you say bad things about them. Really? That's the way it is? That's how it goes?
Yeah.
You're not innocent until proven guilty on behalf of the king?
Nope.
His representatives are going to believe you're guilty as they try to persecute you and prosecute you.
Just like drugs.
And they're going to lie about it without any evidence. Like, there's no evidence. I'm not a greedy opportunist. I really take serious offense to that. I structured this whole thing in such a way that I could never be accused of that because I'm an activist and I care about my reputation. It's all I have. It's all you got as an activist. If you can't be found to be an ethical human being, well, nobody's going to pay any attention to what you have to say about what's wrong in the world. It's my number one asset as an activist. It's the thing I protect the most.
Yeah.
So I've never done anything so that they could call me a criminal, call me a greedy opportunist. I never tried to hide anything. I never tried to deceive anybody. I haven't lied about anything. I've just tried to do this the right way as a good human being trying to do it the right way. And so there's the Crown up there calling me a greedy opportunist. And I want to talk about that because what is this legalization if not greedy opportunism?
Oh,
you know?
Yeah, I know, in a bigger form, way bigger form.
Their
right?
whole gig is greedy opportunism.
Yeah.
This was about a group of activists across Canada that swayed public opinion through science and truth and reason to the point where a political party that was had been struck down to below opposition status could rise up, run on a platform of legalizing cannabis, unheard of throughout all my time as an activist, that any government would ever say anything like that.
And he's still
But here came Mr. Justin Trudeau, and he's going to legalize cannabis for everyone. That's what he said. And the poor and the sick, they don't need to worry. There'll be stores that they can go into and get what they want. They won't need to worry. Lies. All a bunch of lies. What was it? It was greedy opportunism. It was Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party recognizing the public opinion that we had formed as activists in Canada and seizing upon that, taking that opportunity to get themselves into a majority government. First time in the Canadian history that had ever happened, and nobody saw it coming.
Yeah.
Like, holy smokes, you can rise from below opposition status to a majority government on a platform. Their number one main thing that whole election was about legalizing cannabis.
Yeah.
I voted for him. I told other people to vote for him.
Yep.
Maybe there wasn't any other option any better, but this was a horrible option because what was their plan? And Freddie Pritchard, he knew it. He was telling us. It was right there on the Liberal website if you wanted to read it, and I did. But I thought, that's just rhetoric. They just got to say that, but that's not how it's going to really roll out. Well, that is how it really rolled out.
Yeah.
They seized the opportunity to capture the entire industry that is a multi-billion-dollar industry just here in British Columbia. And they had a hostile takeover of that industry using our tax dollars to implement a system where they continue to make prohibition prices on cannabis at everybody else's expense, and especially the poor and the sick. This is not legalization that we've been fighting for, folks.
No.
I'm sorry, Glenn, you don't want to say things.
No, that's right.
I ramble on, you know.
That's right.
Well, I get going on all
I think
this.
our choice when he ran was it Stephen Harper? Didn't he beat Stephen Harper?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another probably reason.
Yeah, I just never thought I would think Trudeau was a bigger scumbag than Stephen Harper.
Wow.
They're all scumbags.
They are.
All the prime ministers in the last 100 years and probably before that. But I can tell you, any person put in charge here that didn't do their proper due diligence, that would have allowed cannabis to be made into an illegal product with the criminal law, is a flippin' scumbag, 100%.
Yeah.
Because it wouldn't have taken that much to uncover the history of the value of cannabis. I mean, it was Second World War. They made it a mandatory crop again, for its industrial uses. But all through it was used for medical purposes and had been for thousands of years throughout numerous different cultures in the world. So any prime minister worth his salt would have said, hey, hold on a minute. Let's see, what is it that we're going to use the criminal law against here? We already got alcohol going on. I mean, you all know about that. So what is it we're going to use the criminal law for? A plant? Wow. Wow. I mean, this must be a pretty deadly plant there. Children are taking a small whiff and dying, yes? No? Oh, what? It's never killed anybody? Seriously? Oh. And what? It's actually used for medicine? Oh. And lots of different things?
It might make you live longer.
Wow. Hold a minute, folks. We don't want to be making this stuff illegal. Any Anybody worth anything with a half a bloody brain that wasn't corrupt would have never made cannabis a criminal offense to possess, grow, or trade. Never. And any subsequent prime minister after that should have done his due diligence on it and stopped the carnage. But none of them did, and they still haven't. Sure, they reduced some of the carnage for average people that can now have cannabis on them and not worry about a criminal record. That's great. Happy to hear it. But when they eliminate the access to the sick and the poor and the addicted, when they keep the prices up there, like, you know, we've gone over this so many times, right? I mean, cannabis can be grown expensively. You can spend a lot of money on equipment. You can produce it at high dollars. You can be an expert that people are willing to pay a top dollar for, and you can sell it for whatever the hell you want. Somebody wants to buy it, fine. And lots of people would always continue to want to pay $4,480 a pound. You know, that's at $10 a gram.
Yeah.
And lots more than that too. The marketplace is rife with people with plenty of money who want the very best and are willing to pay for that. And that market should be allowed to happen and flourish in its natural way. Fine.
Yeah.
But to stifle and enforce out anybody else that would find other ways to bring cannabis to market, that would find ways to get it to the people that are poor, the people that are sick, and all of that, that's where we got a real crime going on.
Amsterdam's been doing it, for decades, and they're just fine. There's nothing going on over there.
Well, cannabis use itself has been going on for millennia.
And everything, right? They use it for salads.
It's a wonderful social thing.
Yeah.
All of that has been proven over and over again.
Yeah.
But even in Amsterdam, there's a lot of corruption. They've legalized it for people to go into coffee shops. Those coffee shops continue to sell it at prices that are reflective of what it was during Prohibition. Okay. And those suppliers of those coffee shops are still criminals. And and I'm sure there's so much corruption in the cannabis world here because of all of that. Corruption on every level. Police officers, everybody. I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm sure, I can be sure about things I'm not 100% about, but I'm 100% sure. There's corruption in Amsterdam with respect to cannabis.
Corruption everywhere, though.
If some coffee shops get to exist and some suppliers get to supply and other suppliers are still being harassed, there's corruption going on. People are being paid off. There's all sorts of deals being made. There's people who have favorites, in-laws maybe, a brother-in-law, who knows? Who knows? But there's corruption for sure, 100%. And it's here in Canada, and it's rampant.
It's all over the world.
This whole...
It is. Sadly, it's a norm.
This legalization is a tax scam. It is a scheme designed to make some very wealthy people way more wealthy. The whole bottom has been falling out of the cannabis legalized industry since it started, really. It's unsustainable. The public won't support it. You cannot wipe out millions of people that will find ways to grow cannabis and get it to their friends and family. But still, it's not those greedy elite parasites that started those companies that are taking these losses. When you look at Canada, I think they just lost another $500 million.
Yeah.
They didn't, the guys on top didn't lose any of that. They don't have to sell their cars and buy a cheaper one or anything like that. These are stockholders. These are all these people that thought, hey, legalization of cannabis, so many people want that stuff. Wow, let's get in on that. Oh, and they're going to keep prices way up there? Okay, well, hey, we're going to make a bundle.
And quickly.
Those people have lost a lot. The shareholders, when you hear $500 million in losses, that's divided up amongst the shareholders, and it doesn't touch the people on the top.
Yeah.
Unless they have shares, which by now they probably don't. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they have to have shares. I really don't know. You know what I want to know? I want to know if the prosecutor, if the federal crown has shares in legal cannabis. I want to know if the judge who's going to be presiding over my case has got investments in legal cannabis. Because if they do, well, that's just a huge conflict of interest, isn't it? Because yes, we are trying to get reasonable access to poor, sick, and addicted people because they deserve it. But what we're really also trying to do is get reasonable access for all of us. that everybody doesn't have to be sick, don't have to be poor, don't have to be addicted. You can go get reasonable access to cannabis. You want to buy the good stuff in those high-end fancy stores, walk right in and plunk down your money, you're good to go. Mm-hmm. But if you don't have money like that, or you just don't want to pay those kind of ridiculous prices for a plant, then there needs to be stores where you can go and get it cheap. We got Safeways and high-end grocery stores that have the very best produce for people. We got Sunrise Market and other small Chinese grocery stores and vegetable and fruit stores where the quality maybe isn't up there as high, and neither are the prices. These poor people in this neighborhood, they can't go to Safeway and fill their basket and buy healthy food for themselves. It's really too bad. It's definitely too bad. But thankfully there's places like Sunrise. It's not bad food. It's just not as pretty. It just doesn't look as nice. Hasn't had the same amount of dollars spent on bringing it to the marketplace and putting it forward in a way that's going to get the top dollar for it. They're just farmers that quickly cultivate what they've got going on. They bring it to the marketplace as cheaply as they can, and the people here get to have some food. Might not be an ideal system, but can you imagine if they didn't allow that? If they said, no, you can't have a bruised apple. You can't have an overripe banana. We can't have any spots on any of that fruit and vegetables. Everybody has to get it from the big suppliers who use government regulations to make sure that there's no microbes, there's no damage, there's no brown spots, there's no nothing. Everything is perfect and safe. And that's where everybody has to buy it. Oh, the prices are out of reach for you? Well, now what are you going to do? What are those people supposed to do? Something as basic as food needs to have reasonable access for people.
Well, now they're messing with food too, GMOs.
I know they are.
Right?
I know they are.
Yep.
This is the world we're moving into. Then we need to stop it. Yep. And that's what we're trying to do. Low barrier access is not just for cannabis consumers to have low barrier access in a store somewhere. It's not just for cannabis suppliers to have low barrier access to a marketplace. Of course they should. It's for low barrier access to a lot of different things. It's becoming a buzzword now. Many groups are talking about how they need to be able to supply low barrier access in the services that they're supplying.
And in this province, a person on disability lives below the poverty level. The Green Party's been asking that they bring us up to at least the poverty level. Right. So now we're on disability unless we use cannabis for pain. We can't even buy it because we're already living below the poverty level. But they want us to pay $10, $15 a gram in some fucking store. Yeah. Really,
it's insane.
It's crazy.
It's criminal.
It's
immoral. It's unethical. It needs to stop.
It is.
We need to find a way to stop these out-of-control politicians, public servants, that are serving the interests of the financial parasites and not us.
Yeah.
I don't know how you do it. I'm not into violent revolution. I don't think that would work anymore anyway.
No, I don't think so.
You know? They got a lot of guns, and they got probably technologies that would put us all down in a heartbeat if they really wanted to.
Yeah.
You know?
Sonic weapons.
It would just stop your heart.
Yeah.
So in a heartbeat, boom, that whole mass of protesters is no longer there. This could happen. I mean, if you don't think by now that this could happen, then you're really delusional. Because they have been proving it during the pandemic. They will take whatever measures they feel like taking. And they think and they believe and they exercise all the power that there is. And not just the power of might with guns and all these other weapons that they have, but with the power of the spoken word, with the power of the media.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
We are being tightly controlled in the messages that we're being allowed to have here. We're finding this out thanks to people like Elon Musk and other people that are delving into the corruption that happens around elections and that happened around the pandemic. We're finding out that there was a whole bunch of information, good information, not misinformation, that was suppressed during the pandemic. Doctors who had a lot to say about things that were stifled and not allowed to be heard. On and on it goes. A prime minister that can decide that good people with valid concerns that aren't being heard to the point where they're going to go to Ottawa to be heard. And he can just hide out until he can label them criminals and he can stand up and call them terrorists.
And
this is bad stuff.
And they keep our focus on other countries who control their media. Like Russia's not allowing any news about Hungary, but they're actually doing sort of the same thing to us.
100%,
right?
Yeah.
But they make us look. It's like what a magician, right? Distraction, right? So, right?
The RV gets torched.
Yeah.
I have a global photographer. Used to be an investigative journalist, but he's now just a photographer, and he's telling me that there is no ability for investigative journalism anymore. It's all just a farce and an illusion. They get to report on what they're told they can report on in ways they're told they can report on it. Nothing gets past the editor's desk that's going to ruffle the feathers of the financial parasites who are rolling out their agenda of control over us. This is what's happening in our world. My only way to do anything about it is to keep pushing hard for the truth about cannabis to be finally embraced and give them no choice but to allow for low barrier access. And that's my one little tiny part that maybe can make a difference. I don't even know. My brother believes that Bitcoin is a way out of all of this. That if enough people embraced Bitcoin, then we could maybe take control of that financial empire that they're using to oppress us.
He fucking over so much.
Oh, I know, that wasn't Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And my brother believes it's, but I don't think he's right,
It was still cryptocurrency.
Yeah, cryptocurrency. All cryptocurrencies are not Bitcoin.
Yes. Okay. Yes. All right.
And Bitcoin has a chance of being a currency that can't be controlled by the elites the way that they're controlling all of our money now, and it's going to get way worse real soon. Right? Well, and that's what I say. I mean, I still don't think that's going to do it. I still don't think that's powerful enough. I think that they've got the media and ways of framing stories to the point where Bitcoin will not be embraced by enough people to make that happen. And they've got ways of dealing with all of these different challenges to their model of oppression and control. This is one where, it's still up in the air. The jury is still out, if you will. We've been showing that there is no justification for the tight controls on cannabis, the over-regulation that's doing what we've been talking about all through here of restricting access to the people that need it the most, and all the rest that does. This brings the entire justice system into disrepute when you try to enforce laws that cannot be enforced and laws that should not be enforced.
Yeah.
It causes so much disrespect for police and governments that they become an adversary instead of a friend. The police, who are supposed to be peace officers and public servants and be amongst us just trying to keep us all safe like warm bunnies, that's not the world we live in anymore.
No.
Mostly because of drug prohibition, the police are seen as the enemies. And they are militarized on that side of things. And they don't respect us either any more than we respect them. They've become on another side where they've bought into the whole thing of the public needs to be policed in these harsh ways, and they're all mostly a bunch of bad people just waiting for their opportunities to be bad. And that's how they treat you. You're a bad guy in their eyes until you can prove otherwise to them, and that's how they treat you. And that's another thing I wanted to mention, is that in the reams of disclosure at great expense to taxpayers that we've now been given as part of our case, in there I am described as anti-police.
Oh, yeah.
What does that do for me?
I know.
How does that affect me when I'm dealing with police?
Maybe you could get your friend that is in the police when it's used to write a letter on your
deputy chief.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what he's willing to do.
Well, he could say just his experience with you.
I don't think he has enough experience with me.
Wow.
We have emails back. In fact, one of those emails, I was calling him a murderer.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
We didn't. The deputy police chief here. We got to know each other when I presented the CSP idea to the board. And we talked afterwards, and he gave me his personal email, and we did exchange a few emails about prohibition and things like that. And then the CSU raided Dana's store on down in the West End there, and they raided the Indigenous dispensary down on the far end of Broadway, all within a couple of days of each other.
Wow.
And I went flipping crazy. I went down there with my signs and my megaphone and I was blasting the VPD who were there, also the CSU, but the VPD were there. So I went for a couple of days in a row down to the VPD station at Canby and whatever it is there first, and just yelled at the top of my lungs at every police officer that went in and out of that building. Mm-hmm. What are you doing? No, it wasn't us, they would say. And I say, well, you're wearing the uniform.
I was there. Yes.
I said, you're wearing the uniform, man. It's all of you in those uniforms.
Yeah.
Eventually, they came and talked to me and said, look, man, the only reason we were there was to try to keep the employees safe from the CSU people. Well, I guess that's their story and they're sticking to it.
Yeah.
But I wrote a letter to that Mr. Stephen Rye of the VPD. I think he's a good man. But I wrote a letter to him expressing my outrage.
Yeah.
And framed it in a way to talk about the lack of access killing people. That by shutting down especially these two dispensaries, there was going to be people that would be seriously affected to the point of death. Because there's a lot of people that are addicts that were using the medicinal cannabis dispensary for getting stuff to get off of that, and had successfully for quite a while. Certainly the indigenous dispensary that was being run down at the end of Broadway, they were in contact with many of their people that were struggling, and now those people were not going to have access, and I likened it to actual murder. Preconceived, first degree murder. You are responsible for knowing the consequences of your action as a police officer. They need to be held to a higher standard. And for them to go down and shut off access to a life-saving medicine for people, well, that is murder, in my opinion. So I wrote him that letter, and I used the term murder several times during that email, and I didn't hear back from him. And I wrote him subsequent emails, and I didn't hear back from him. And then they raided the CSPRV. And I wrote him another email, and he wrote me back.
He wrote you back.
And he said, I'm sorry. He said, it's not in my command area. I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
I will look into it for you. Someone will call you, I
to.
believe that Steve has done good work for us behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Although it didn't prevent the raid that happened, subsequently after that. This was that first raid. This wasn't this last one in May. This was the raid that happened 2 weeks after we had to move out of the store for not having a license, where they just came to our RV and stole all the medicine that we had for people in the neighborhood, didn't charge us, but threatened us and made me drive the RV away, although a couple hours later I was right back, where it was before. But that's when I wrote him that letter and said, what are you doing? Why would you do this? We have such good work we've been doing here. And that's when he wrote me back and said it wasn't in his command area, he wasn't aware of it. But like I say, he was still there and unable to stop what happened in May, where the VPD brass decided that because of reports by some of their officers who were driving by the Weedabago with our signs out that say that we're providing low barrier access to cannabis, and they were reporting that they thought there was probably cannabis being provided there. And the VPD, the VPD brass, those guys at the top, because all the officers that I talked to after that happened all told me the same thing. Hey man, this went way above my pay grade.
Yeah.
It wasn't them that made those decisions. They wouldn't have made those decisions. They know who we are here. The cops on the
they're
beat.
down at ground street level. Those guys in the offices.
But the guys in the ivory towers wearing all their fancy badges,
they got
stripes on their arms. Because they're supposed to have become good police officers by that time, you would think that the brass, the guys on top of a big city police department would be people that would be able to know right from wrong. But apparently not. They decided what the right thing to do was launch an investigation. And it wasn't just, hey, let's send Detective John down to talk to whoever's in charge down there and let's see what we can find out. No, they never did that at all. They never even brought me in for questioning.
Yeah.
They secretly, like a bunch of cowboy espionage spies, hid in different areas around where they could get cameras on us. And they sent in undercovers of people who were dressed up to make it look like they actually needed cannabis for some serious reason. And then willing to lie to us at the window about their usage or whatever it was that they were willing to do to get us. They decided to get us. So they spent who knows how many hundreds of thousands of dollars on Operation Blaze. Can you imagine Operation Blaze that ends up with the RV going up in flames? That's a weird one.
Yeah.
But that's what they decided to call it. And they used all of their espionage tricks and who knows what kind of equipment they had. And they put together a huge block of all this information to prove what we had admitted to before we even started. We told them all about it before we started.
Yeah.
The CSP has always provided low cost as well as no cost throughout its inception. We were present at all the 420 rallies, the Cannabis Day rallies and protests, and all of these other protests. We were there with a table. We were raising funds for the CSP by providing low barrier, low cost access to cannabis. It's nothing new for us. But it was new for them. They couldn't believe what they were seeing because it's against the law after all.
It is.
And Ottawa, those great gods in Ottawa who must know everything. In fact, that's what they tell me, you know. They say, well, people voted for whatever it is that's going on because millions of people get together and vote for the ruling party. And whatever the ruling party does, that's what millions of Canadians, the majority of Canadians want. Bullshit. Bullshit it is. So, but that's how they do it. They have, those are their mindsets. You know, we must uphold the law. These people are disobeying the law. They must be bad people. And even though we are proving the opposite and demonstrating the opposite day after day here, they have never really come and checked this out.
No.
Health Canada's never been here to see what we're doing. Never. Didn't send anybody ever to spend a day with us, to talk to me and my people. We are the true experts in this healthcare crisis of an opioid overdose. We are the true frontline experts. 6 years of being immersed in this, and for me it goes way beyond that because I learned all that I knew about edibles. Well, not all that I know because I've learned a lot since, but I knew enough to start the program from my experience over 18 years ago with the Herb School, just one block over in hell, where we had people coming and telling us, hey man, a couple of good strong brownies and I can get through the night without that other stuff. Yeah. And then after that, more and more and more people coming and saying that cannabis had saved their life, that they were now off those hard drugs, and now they've just been there, done that, but they're just a cannabis user. I've known for almost 20 years that this is the right thing to do, but they've never come to talk to me at all, period.
Because their education thinks that they're better than us. Right?
It's a bias.
It is. Based
on what provides them what they're interested in, which is money, security, and power. And they do what they do. They selectively look at the information they want to look at that supports their ability to get money, power, and control over people. And so they don't want to have any information. We were told years ago as activists from people that had worked right inside the Justice Minister's office that cannabis prohibition was a no-go. You don't talk about that within the Justice Ministry. Because of course it makes no sense. There's no justice involved in interfering with some human being who happens to have a little bag of flowers on him. So there's no complainant. There's no damage that was just done around the corner and now we found the guy and you match the description and you've harmed somebody seriously. There's no justice in having somebody dragged into a courtroom and ruining their lives because they had plants. So they never even talked about it. And just like Health Canada never comes here to talk to us about it. Just like the VPD runs their investigation Blaze for over 6 months before they come and arrest us and seize our vehicle. And in all that time, they don't even bring me in for questioning. They don't even come and ask me anything. All they do is come here and lie. They come here in clothes that deceive us and tell stories that deceive us to try to trick us into what? Providing somebody who's telling us they need it with what they need? Helping somebody in a situation of life and death with what could save their life? This is what they're going to trick us into doing? And we're criminal for that? No, this is so crazy. This is such an indictment of the Canadian justice system and the Canadian way of governance that it needs to be the impetus for a complete recall on Canadian governance. We need to have a rethink of what it means to be a public servant in Canada, and what rights we as free people actually have and should have. We need a big time rethink on all this, folks. It has gone way too far for way too long. And if there was ever any doubt, there isn't anymore. And we're going to be exposing that. We'll find out next Tuesday morning what the date is that we get to go in and start providing our evidence about how the federal government is delinquent, corrupt, and criminal in their actions. This is not the CSP and the Healing Wave on trial here. This is not Van Du and the Serious Hope Society and the team of volunteers and bakers and supporters that we have here that's on trial. We're going to flip the switch because we have no reason to be put on trial. We are an open book. We've been that forever. Anybody would just have to go and watch any of the THC shows over the last 3+ years to know that we are an open book. We don't hide anything, and we tell all about it every chance we get. No, this is the federal government that's on trial here. This is our governance in Canada that is so corrupt that they're willing to let thousands of poor people die to protect their interests. And there's a lot of interests going on here. There's a lot of money being made off of prohibition. There's a lot of money being made off of this overdose epidemic. Safe supply. We taxpayers are going to be on the hook for paying pharmaceutical companies their ridiculous markup to provide the hard drugs that people demand out here because they can't get off them. They don't demand them because they love their lifestyle and this is how they want to live. They all want off these drugs. All of these people out here that we encounter that come to our RV are there because they want to get off those drugs. And if there's any hope that they can, they're going to try. But it's so difficult. It is so hard. And most of them know how hard it is because they have tried. They've tried several times. They've been in the pits of hell several times and couldn't do it. And went back to doing whatever it took to prevent all of those horrible, horrible feelings. So this is a huge story. And it's evidenced by all that we've done. And it's evidenced by the fact that you really don't hear much about it in mainstream media. If that doesn't show you that there's corruption in how we're being told about the world, then I don't know what does. What kind of a story could be bigger than this one in today's world? Maybe there's some horrible things that happened in the past that are still big stories. But this is right here and right now. This is several years of thousands of people every year dying from a poison drug supply needlessly. Simply because our government refuses to admit that they were wrong and allow for low barrier access to cannabis for the consumers and the suppliers. They want to make scads of money off of this like they always have. They want prohibition to be still raging the way it always has despite so-called legalization because all of these groups that have been making money on prohibition don't want to give it up. And they got so much money. And they've got the ear of government. They helped put them there. And that's why we're where we are today. If you don't think we need a big rethink and a redo of democracy, then, well, I guess you're getting the government you deserve. But we deserve far better, in my opinion, and the future generations deserve far better. Freedom is an inherent natural right on this planet. It's not something given to you by a king or any wealthy person. It's not their business. Your freedom is your freedom. And any time that people try to interfere with that, it's almost always for their own personal interests and not really for the good of the people they're trying to take the rights away from. And anytime governments or churches get involved, it's corrupt as can be. They prey on the people. We need to have a real big rethink about how we are governed and who's getting paid our money to help us. End of the year and I'm all round up, eh?
Yep. Yep.
Wow, I lost my joint again.
All right, I'm going to go back and do the producing again.
Are you? You're gonna leave me to it?
I'll see you next year.
Yeah, I guess I won't see it till next year.
Yeah, I know.
It's been a slice, Glenn.
It's been a slice, but
It's been a hell of a year. Somebody should put together a montage of things because there's been a bunch of different things, you know, and we'll maybe have people do all of that. I don't know.
Maybe
But
somebody can.
all I know is I'm just getting older and older.
Are you?
Less and less, a face for cameras. And I want it all to be over so that I can go retire somewhere and they don't have the final images of me doing my show as a decrepit old man. But and I'll tell you, I'm gonna sue Health Canada one of these days.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get my mind wrapped around that because the more I think about how they've ruined my life. I live a great life, because I make the best out of whatever I got going on. I was very fortunate in my life to have really good strategies about how to deal with shit when it wasn't okay. I had lots of stuff not okay in my life, as we all probably did. And I just got really lucky about the influences that I had in my life that allowed me strategies to be able to deal with this stuff. So I'm still living a great life, don't get me wrong.
Yep.
But I wouldn't.
Saving people's lives.
But I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have to save people's lives. I wouldn't have to fight for the legalization of the most beneficial herb on the planet from a bunch of corrupt politicians who are serving the interests of a bunch of financial parasites. I wouldn't have been doing any of this. I would have been pursuing other loves that I have, like living in nature, with water, in tune with nature, able to free my mind of all of these types of thoughts that I have to have all the time doing this, into thoughts of wonderment and amazement and awe. Because that's how I really feel about this universe that we live in. That I can't fully grasp or probably even partially grasp just how amazing it is to be a 4 billion year old organism that's evolved on this planet in a universe of such vastness and such amazement. And I want to spend my life thrilled with that.
Wonder what happens.
And yet here I am, more often than not, worried about governments that won't allow people to live their lives in ways that make sense, with reasonable access to this plant. It's just the most stupidest thing. I can't stand unreasonableness, and I can't stand people being harmed when they don't deserve to be harmed. And when it's my tax dollars being used to harm them, and it's when it's my efforts to try to get legalization that's being used against us, I can't stop doing what I'm doing, and I'm not happy about it. I want to retire. And so myself, on behalf of so many other people out there that have been, constantly consumed by the evils of cannabis prohibition, and there's millions of us. I meet them and talk to them and interact with them and have for years and years and years. I know that I've met, a percentage of what is millions of people that have had to worry about losing their kids or their job. That have not had access to what would have given them a good night's sleep or given them relief from all the stress in their lives and all the other things. These are all serious damages perpetrated on us by a financial group of parasites that have taken over our government way back in the beginning and way before that, and will continue on as long as they get to.
Yeah.
And I wish I knew some other way to stop it. But this is the only one I got. And I hope that you could at least help me in that and join the team of trying to get freedom through the freedom of cannabis, because there's some hope there that in a cannabis loved based world where people are free to be smart instead of drunk, we could solve these issues, and we could solve a whole lot of issues.
Yeah.
And we could be a thriving,
even the environment,
society full of abundance and love. And this is the hope that I see that we have through this path to the top of the mountain. There's many paths to the top of every mountain. This is the one that I found that works for me, that gives me something to feel like I'm at least trying to make a difference in. And here we are, way farther into it than I ever thought I would be. Way more oppression and opposition to freedom than I really thought there was. And it's going to be a quagmire and a half to get out of. We all need to work on it as best we can. Think about it. What can you do? How can you frame it? What meme can you come up with? Who could you write an email to that is an influencer that could make a difference? I'm disgusted by all these people that are influencers and what they use that influence for. We need to have ethical, bright people, good people, be able to step forward and use their talents to get us out of where we're going, because it's dangerous and it's not going to be fun. And you all know what I think about fun. Thanks, Glenn. I know you want to go.
Yeah, we'll see you later.
We'll see you later. I want to go too. It's been a hell of a year, and as much as I really value and appreciate the opportunity to be able to put my thoughts out there, to gather the insights of all of my clever friends and to share them with the audience and maybe make a difference, I find the show to be very taxing. It doesn't give me the energy that I normally get from being on stage and talking to a bunch of faces that interact back with me and show me that they agree with me and really give me energy and juice. Those events for me are powerful. Doing this show has always been a burden. I thought that soon I would get comfortable with it and I would just be able to be myself and rant on about all the things that I am able to rant on about with people as I'm talking to them, or even larger groups of people, like I say, on a stage situation. But I've never really been able to capture that as I look into this series of black eyes on the back of a phone, and I can't see any of you. I can imagine, but it doesn't do it for me. I'm not saying anything, I'm not going to quit doing the show until it's the right time to do that. But I did think that on this, the final day of this year, I would at least share that much with you. That these shows are hard for me to do, and I don't really feel like I do a very good job of it most of the time. I feel like I could be much better if I could feel more natural and not be talking into some little black thing there. So I thank you all for coming along on the journey with me and putting up with my lack of professionalism and and not really quite being the person that I can be when I'm just one-on-one with somebody or in a setting where I can interact and get that kind of feedback. I will keep trying, and maybe I'll get better at being able to rant about these things, and maybe one day I'll be able to rant about it in such a profound way that will inspire a whole bunch of people to get active and do something, and the very weight of all of those people working together on a goal can result in critical mass, and we really could change the world in a very profound way. I get giddy when I start thinking about the possibilities of a world where there is no prohibition on our rights to access nature, and all of this stuff just goes away, and instead of being an angry alcohol-based society filled with fear, we can become a loving love-based civilization, embracing cannabis, embracing nature, embracing our own nature of who we are and what we can be as beings. And we can evolve into something that can be fantastic in the future, both as individuals and as a society. I really hope that can happen. And I'm willing to continue to force myself to sit here and try to get these messages across as best I can. Until it's no longer something that's worth doing for me. So I'll be here for a while, it seems. We are, after all, on a quest for a low barrier access community cannabis store. That is the journey, that is the story. And I'm sure this story doesn't stop until we get there or can't ever get there. I really hope that the latter can't be the case and won't be the case. I believe we will win. I believe we've passed the tipping point. I believe there's enough of you out there that understand these things and care about these things that we will reach critical mass one day of a society of people who just won't take it anymore. And we will force those changes that will result in our rights being respected and our access to nature being granted, being allowed, granted and allowed. As I said before, these are natural rights. We have natural rights as beings on this planet, not to be bullied by people. Sometimes if you don't have a government, you got to not be bullied by getting strong, whatever it takes. But I'm just saying, we have natural rights to not be interfered with by powerful forces that have leverage over us. And especially that, when people are in positions of power over us, we have way more rights to protection from those people. We really need to establish all of that and stop it from going the direction it's going. Because right now, in our little tiny little case here, rather than getting the support of our public servants to do what we have proven and demonstrated to be a life-saving service during a public health emergency, they are using taxpayer dollars, the full weight of the criminal law, and everything they can come up with, including telling lies, to try to prevent that from happening. That's how bad it is. That's what we got to do something about. I don't think I really need to give a big recap of what the CSP is all about. If you've been watching the show today from the beginning, I think you got a pretty good sense that we've been providing cannabis as an option for people here for coming up on 6 years in February, and having a very profound effect in our success of doing that. And what we really want is to be able to have stores, that there be stores regularly, easily available to people all throughout neighborhoods across Canada, especially where people are struggling with those other drugs that they've been using to try to deal with their pain. That there needs to be a shift in what people see as their real options and their real safe supplies, and that's what we're fighting for. It's been quite a journey. I think next week we'll probably have a much better recap of the year that was, as we will then be moving into 2023. That auspicious year 100 years ago in 1923, when the federal government of Canada saw fit to bow to the United States pressure and just allow for cannabis prohibition here, and all that's happened ever since. So I think we'll have a good recap next week on all of that. For now, we'll do our regular weekly weather reports. We'll go out and say hi to the Weedabago people, and then we'll wrap it up for the year and get some rest and prepare for what should be a very good year ahead. I'm sure hoping so anyway. I don't think there's anything else I needed to cover, so let's just go do it.
You got an umbrella? You might need.
Am I going to need an umbrella? I got a hat.
Oh, you got a hat. All right.
I got this silly hat on.
You got the hat. All right. I think that'll be all right.
I like silliness, you know. I'm not going for looking like some kind of a dapper dandy or anything. You know, if it's silly, that's a good thing. Oh, I see we're locked back in again. There's some of the VPD right there.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, in their car?
In their car.
Oh yeah.
I don't think they're coming to get us.
End of the shift.
Maybe they'll come and get us one of these times. Not yet.
Okay, I got it.
So there they are.
Oh, you forgot your report?
Driving by as they always do. The weather in Vancouver is dismal. It's raining, not as hard as it can, but it's raining. It's wet, soggy. The amazing thing is that if you saw last week's show, you saw piles and piles of snow everywhere. We had one of the most fiercest winter events that we've ever had. More snow and more dreadful cold all at once than I ever remember in my lifetime. I remember large amounts of snow every once in a while. I remember some cold snaps, but I don't remember cold snaps like that, and I don't remember large amounts of snow happening at the same time. This was quite the winter episode that we've had here. And now, all of a sudden, last Friday, this is only chill factor, which was more around minus 25, to positive 8 degrees. Just like that.
I know, eh?
Well, it has only taken Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and today, and there is no snow to be seen anywhere.
Nope.
And there were big piles that have melted. There were huge, huge 5-foot in diameter icicles hanging off the building that are gone. One of them reduced down to about 3.5 feet in diameter and then fell to the ground in a thundering crash, broke into huge big chunks of icebergs, and that's all gone. There's not a shred of evidence anywhere that we had cold and snow here. So there's your weekly Vancouver weather report. We live in a strange climate here in Vancouver with the ocean and the mountains and all of the Arctic fronts and tropical storms that come up and all the rest of it. And so far we've had quite a winter already. So here we are on Cordova, just shy of Main Street here in Vancouver. Well, we've got our Weedabago, our Ganja Mobile, the Dubio, RV. It goes by many names in this neighborhood, but everybody knows it. We're iconic, we're legendary. We've been here in this RV for 2 years since last November 1st. So we've just completed 2 years and 2 months of not this RV,
No.
but a RV.
A RV.
And when not in an RV, under the tent, like you see there, only for short periods of time. We had 2 weeks when the VPD seized it that we had to work out from underneath the tent with big signs out taunting them every time they drove by, to the point where they gave us our RV back and we parked it right where it was, and we continue our program, and we have never stopped, and we won't until it's available easily enough that we're not needed anymore. But in the meantime, we're here. We had the other RV firebombed in November. That was just crazy. We still don't understand why that happened. The street has not produced an answer for us. We really still don't know. There's been no follow-up of any sort or any other problems since. Touch wood on that one. And we bought another RV thanks to people helping us. Some wonderful people donated to us, and we managed to get another RV. And we're doing what we do. We are the Cannabis Substitution Project.
Yep.
We're a community volunteer harm reduction site. Uh-oh. Hey, watch yourself. You can't have water falling down on people's heads here, so I'll look after that. There's Ted in the window. How you doing, Ted?
Hey, how's it going, people?
Hey, Dad.
How's it been going with you?
Everything's going all right.
Yeah, I had a wet but steady day, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a wet one. Everybody's been wet. Thank goodness it's been
All right, we're gonna go to the back. We got a new sign made up.
Oh,
A
yeah.
little bit different than the one we had before, but it pretty much says the same things. We're here to stop fentanyl with THC. We are a low barrier access point. We are the Cannabis Substitution Program, and we've been doing this since 2017. So 6 years. And this is another favorite sign of mine. Apparently the prosecutor, you know, the federal crown, doesn't like having to walk past my RV every day. Well, I thought I'd give him a little more, or her a little more stuff to think about on the way by.
Oh, wow.
Because these laws against cannabis, preventing access and restricting access, are absolutely an unjustified impediment on Canadians who would otherwise be using it to better their lives and escape addiction. So I hope they have to read that every time they walk by, and I hope they think about it. Hey, how's it going, George? Oh, boy. It's wet up there. I wasn't going to knock it.
Yeah,
It's
we're
just
wet.
gone right in. This is the CSP. We have the lights here. Oh, yeah, pretty good. Okay. We do have light. This is the CSP area. We have caps and cookies and gummies and brownies and muffins and all of these different things that we have from all of these amazing people that help us with what we're doing. We can't thank them enough, and we can't thank all of them properly, so I'll just leave it at that. You know who you are. A lot of people know who you are. We do put it out there, and certainly you know, there is promotion of those people who are helping us. But it's not about that. It's a wonderful thing that they've been on board with us for years, and I've never had any of them come and say, hey, you know, I'm not getting enough mention, because that's not why they do it. They do it because this is the right thing to do. They care, and we need more caring people to step forward and do this type of thing. It's a great way to live. If you're going to make a New Year's resolution coming up, make a resolution to be all that you can be in giving back and making your world a better place. And you'll find that the energy and the value that you get out of that is far superior to just about any other New Year's Eve goal that you could have. Do that for yourself. That's what we should all do as our mission, is be as good as we can to ourselves. And we live in echo chambers. So if you want to get love, put out love. If you want to put out or get, you know, things back to you, put out things and they'll come back to you. It works that way. It really does. And it's more about how you feel about yourself in your heart than anything else. And that's a value that is very hard to come by without doing it the right way. Be a good person, and you'll feel good about yourself, and you'll do all sorts of more good things, and all sorts of good things will flow from that. It's how it works. Try to rid yourself this year of the past, of all the things that have been holding you back, and all the things that were done to you that wasn't right. Forgive all of those people that harmed you. Forgive yourself. Work on being just the best you can be in this moment and the moments to come, without worrying about other things in the past that would encumber that. More messages from Neil. Well, I'm coming for a little sit. So after, how long has it been now? We've been in here for a month plus, I think, in this RV. How's it working for you, George?
Sorry, George.
Front door is an interesting policy, but
It is.
It's your front door
we
policy.
still had our old window.
Yeah, we don't have a side window that works here in this RV. We're going to get one that does, or we're going to get a different RV that has that going on. Because for right now, as you saw when we came through, Ted's sitting at the driver's window there, and we're doing things from there. You know, we're resilient, we are pot people, we make shit work. That's just what we do. And we're making this work, and it's working okay. But as George says, it's not quite as good as it could be. Still not a lot of headroom for you, eh?
No,
No.
just at the back.
Can you stand up almost
I
completely?
can stand up in the back.
Nice. That's good. No wonder you want to look after the CSP. So any thoughts on the past year? We're going to wrap up the year here moments from now.
Wow. There's a lot happened in the last year.
That's what you're saying. We might even talk about it next week, too.
What are the highlights for you? Anything, the lows and the highs?
My greatest low recently was the winter weather that, you know, my house, the pipes all froze in my house. And
Right.
I'm crawling under my house at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning trying to thaw stuff out. And
Sitting on sky trains for hours trying to get into work?
yeah, there was the 4-hour marathon to get here one morning. That
So
was,
this last winter has really been kind of a low point for sure, and that probably started right around Remembrance Day, where we were getting those break-ins, and then the RV was torched, and then we were under a tent for a while, and it's just been difficult, I will say, you know, in these last couple of months here. Nothing that's going to stop us from doing what we're doing. Nothing ever stopped George from coming in, even though, like he said, you know, crawling under his house till 4 in the morning, sitting on a SkyTrain that wouldn't deliver him on time. We're still here. We will always be here until this job is done. That has to be the case. And it has been quite a low in the last little while in all those respects. I'm feeling the stress. I'm feeling the stress of a looming court case where I'm going to be putting up with a federal government using my money to lie about me and to try to make me into a criminal and punish me somehow. That bothers me a lot. I'm fine with not getting some sort of a plaque that thanks me for my efforts over the last 6 years. I've dedicated more than the last 6 years to this neighborhood and this problem, and I'm okay without recognition on that. I don't really care. But I will not put up with being shamed, having my good name, you know, ruined and destroyed because of a bunch of lies from greedy opportunists that just want to seize the whole cannabis industry out from underneath everybody. I'm really upset about that, and there's a lot of stress involved in that. I'm very stressed that the federal government doesn't kick in and say, okay, hey, let's protect these people. Enough is enough. Instead, they're just waiting in the wings to see what eventually, I guess, the judge says. We thought they were waiting in the wings to see what the judge would say in the Howell case, and they said great things, and it didn't sway Health Canada. We thought they would be swayed by the great decisions that came out of the Warnocky, Seaman, and Martin case, but nothing. They're still just sitting back there hoping, grasping for some straw that would give them the right to be able to impose their evil will on people, to not be able to access cannabis properly, to protect the financial interests of those people that they're protecting. That all stresses me the hell out for sure. I'm getting old. I want to retire. I don't need to go on and on about why I'm stressed. But, you know, this has been a tough couple of months. George is right. This last winter has been very tough for us. And we need some relief. I'm pissed with a city that has the power to get behind us and support us despite an evil federal government. And yet they won't. I imagine there's good leverage being used on them to not do that as well. I mean, everybody's just doing what's in their interests, and it isn't in the city's interest, apparently, to deviate from the federal narrative of safe supply comes in the form of pharmaceutical pills, and cannabis is not a medicine. So, we will refresh ourselves. We will put this year to bed, and we will come at it with a whole new, invigorated, motivated state of let's get her done this coming year. And we will not be stopped, and we will pull out all the punches. And I'm imagining that in our court case, we are going to have Dr. M.J. Malloy. We're going to have Professor Zachary Walsh. We are going to have many of these experts in their fields step forward and testify on our behalf. They have said that they will. I know that they will. And we will kick the butt of the federal government. We will kick this Cannabis Act right out of the park because it doesn't belong in any fashion at all. For us, it's no longer about this regulation being altered or that regulation being altered. The whole Cannabis Act is an evil document. It's really no different than the original MMAR. They've done very little to change anything. It is still prohibition. And for those people that are on the supply side and not part of the cartel, it's Prohibition 2.0, as was witnessed this year in Ted Smith's arrest or whatever with the CSU and the imposition of a $6.5 million fine on him. We've had the Blue Door. Good people that supplied that option for this neighborhood for all the years that they did in the face of great oppression from government, trying every step of the way to get that license. Every time I went to talk to Dave or Shannon, they'd be talking about the license that they got, that when it expires and they never wanted to sell without a license either. They wanted a license. And yet they're now going to lose all of the assets that they accumulated over that time. Online sellers in South Surrey just this last week raided and busted and over $14 million in assets seized. These are greedy opportunists, these federal crown prosecutors and enforcement people. They wait and watch and allow for the accumulation of wealth, and then they swoop in and seize it. They are bastards. They look for whatever is the best way to hurt you. We were going to have a guest on today talk about the lies that were told about him to do with trying to prosecute him simply for wanting to get high-dose edibles to sick people. The government has become evil. They are not our friends. You can't trust them. We need to kick them out and start with something new. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's vote in a different party, because I don't see that that's ever been a solution, and maybe it still can't be. I really don't know. But I do know that things need to change. There needs to be some sort of an epiphany amongst our society where we realize just how bad things have gotten with these corrupt, evil governments on behalf of these financial parasites, and we somehow put a stop to it. That's part of my message for the end of the year. The rest of the message is about love. That we do what we do because we love life. We love the potentials for the next generations to have a good life. We love all of those things that are good in life, and we want to be able to experience them. Life is about that. There's a lot of other things in life that put things in perspective, that allow for those perspectives, and that's all fine. But most importantly, it's about how you feel yourself. So as you go through your life deciding on what things you're going to do and not do and how you're going to think about things, be very kind to everyone out there, especially those people that it's hard to be kind to. Those are the ones that really need your understanding the most. We never know the journeys that people have been on, the things that have happened to them. We can never know all of those things for anyone except ourselves, and we really don't even know ourselves that well. So be kind to everyone. Be kind to yourself because of all the things that happened to you that you've overcome and you're still here despite. Be kind to yourself. And the way to do it, I'm sure you all know it, it's the end of the year, but it's still my theme, and it probably always will be. The most important thing, have as much fun as you can in whatever you do. We'll see you next year.